Hi there. So the Buddha wasn't a god, but he was a man who, through his own heroic spiritual efforts, gained a new level of insight and awareness far beyond that of a normal human being, which is why he's still celebrated today, 2,500 years later, by over 500 million followers of the Buddha worldwide. So welcome to Brixton Buddhist Community's Buddha Day celebration. So my name is Viryanaga and this is Maitranara. And we're here joining you from Amarapuspa community today to host our Buddha Day celebrations, where we'll be exploring a bit about the life of the Buddha. We've got some great talks, great Sangha videos and so on. So Maitranara will be saying a bit more about that in a moment. So we're teachers at the Brixton Buddhist Community and ordained members of the Triratna Buddhist order, and along with our other Sangha members and friends will be hosting the whole day. Just also want to introduce Adam. We've got Adam on tech today. So here's Adam. Hello. So Adam's helping us out with all the videos, so he's here as well in Dana Prasada community. And just want to say that we've got a chat room running today as well. So if you want to let us know who you are, where you're tuning in from, we'll give you some shout outs today as well. Really good to try and get a sense of community. So let us know where you're tuning in from in the chat room. We'll say hi to you. So we thought we'd start this little segment just by exploring a bit about what Buddha Day is. So Maitranara, warm welcome to you. Nice to have you. Nice to be co-hosting with you today.
Thank you, brother. Nice to be here.
Yeah.
I live here, so everybody else.
So we're celebrating Buddha Day, and Brixton's a bit slow, isn't it? So because it's the full moon a couple of weeks ago, but we're celebrating it today. But what does Buddha Day mean for us or for you particularly?
Thanks for asking. Very warm welcome from me. My name's Maitranara. From my point of view, I suppose it's a chance to kind of see how we orientate ourselves in our lives in a way, we've got this idea of the Buddha, and we can see whether we're orientating ourselves in that kind of direction, so to speak, So for me, the Buddha, he exemplifies all these qualities which I really I really feel like will benefit me to embody, benefit others, benefit the world, And I want to see on Buddha Day, I kind of have a sense of am I orientating myself in the direction of those kind of manifest qualities. And a real chance to also I suppose celebrate, that found this wonderful teachings, wonderful sense of community, all the things that kind of give my life a meaning in a way, and it's a real, kind of a way of just really focusing on that and seeing, what I've been given. I give to my situation, give to my community, and I try to help the Buddhism to grow and prosper, but I've been given way more, and from my point of view, it's a real celebration of that and all the people down the ages that have kind of benefited in the same way. What about you?
What about me? God, a bit early, isn't it, for those big questions? Let me have a think. Well, I think for me, there's something around. It's interesting, isn't it? We celebrate like 3 main festivals in the Buddhist calendar: Buddha Day, Dharma Day, and Sangha Day, and each kind of capture a different quality. And Buddha Day, if you like, is the foremost, isn't it, or the biggest in a way? Because of course it stems from the Buddha, the founder, and where it all sort of started. And I think I'm really a bit like you. I'm really impressed by the lineage of that. The fact that there's not many things that last 2,500 years and are still vital and alive or something. So something coming out of that. And really, like Buddhism is like it's a religion of change, isn't it? It teaches it well. One of its main teachings is about change and impermanence, but it also says that our actions matter and that we can change. And I think always from a young age, I had maybe a fairly naive belief that I could change the world or wanted to change the world. And for me, there's something about the Buddha that captures the actions of a single man actually having a huge impact, or a single person having a huge impact in the world in a way. So for me, it embodies that archetype of change and help and transformation. Not that I necessarily ever think I'll be enlightened like the Buddha, but it gives me confidence that actually our actions do matter and that well, they can lead to positive positive benefits, positive outcomes for people around the world and people around us.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
Great. Got a bit longer. Anything else to say?
Well, I just suppose I'm so pleased to be sharing the day with well, the whole Buddhist world, really. I mean, we, as you say, we're a bit late to the party.
Better late than never.
Better late than never. We did do a full moon puja, didn't we, to celebrate the actual day. But as with any good parties, if you kind of extend them on, there's still good. So we've, I just feel what a day to be part of something bigger, really. Touching to something bigger. People will be all around the world to be, celebrating this. I was on the phone to a Mohsiddhi in India, who's one of the Indian Order members in India, and he was saying that, Buddha Jayanti, there's just this huge outpouring of emotion and devotion, really, throughout the Buddhist world in India. So yeah, we're part of that, and we've got all these brothers and sisters all around the world, kind of celebrating that. People we know very well within our community, but then extended way beyond that. Just good to be part of something something bigger. Yeah,
there's definitely something in that for me as well. I mean, I looked up that figure this morning. How many Buddhists are there in the world? I know we've got several hundreds of thousands of people involved in True Atma, but that 500 million figure is quite an impressive number, isn't it? So I like the idea of collective practice, and I guess just locally, I remember back at our Sangha Day last November, our big Sangha Day celebration in Brixton. For me it was actually I think it's the highlight of probably all the Sangha activities we've ever done in a way. This collective gathering. So just something about coming together, all together to practice. Obviously, got a slightly different setup now, because of the circumstances around the lockdown. Here we are coming to you via the live stream, but hopefully we're hoping to capture that sense of collective practice, aren't we? Shared practice over the course of this morning, basically. Maybe I'll hand over to you to say something about the programme.
Yeah. I'll say something about the programme. Just one other thing occurred to me on this theme, which was that what would our lives look like without Buddha in them? And what would the lives be like without Buddha in them? Where all the meaning kind of flows out of that in a way, that kind of transcendental possibility in our lives, that we can move beyond these limitations that we have. So I just suppose it's nice to keep that in mind. The actual presence, in a way, the kind of living presence of the Buddha in our lives. All right, so anyway, I'll save it later.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Got on a roll now.
You do what you want, like an hour, you normally do.
Okay, so I'm really excited about the programme we've got. So in a short little while, we're going to be viewing these Sangha videos. So I basically have encouraged people in our Brixton Buddhist community to, from their kind of lockdown situation, wherever that is in the country, to make a little video about about kind of what their life is like, and or an element of their life, and how Buddhism is affecting that, or maybe what is current for them, what's life for them in their current situation, in regards to kind of Buddhist teachings and sensibilities. So really excited to see what the videos, what our friends have to say. So we'll be looking at some of those, and then there's Padmavajra. I'll say a little bit more about Padmavajra. I'll introduce him in a way just before his talk, but he's made a talk just for Brixton Buddhist Community. So Padmavajra, if you don't know, he's one of the ordination team living in the men's ordination retreat centre in Norfolk, and the real heavyweight of our movement, if you can say that, in a spiritual sense. So Padmavajra has made a talk for Brixton, and we'll be watching the first half, and then I'll be leading us in a little what's called Buddha Smriti, a recollection of the Buddha, a short meditation, really, just to evoke Buddha qualities. And then after that, we'll watch the second half of Padmavajra's talk. And then following that, there'll be an opportunity to come on the Zoom call, and the details of that be in the description. You can come on the Zoom call and we'll have a chance to discuss that talk. It's a really rich talk, lots and lots in there to get into. Abundance of Lotuses is the name of the talk. So we'll be getting into discussion in that. So that'll be following after the live stream.
Great, thank you much. No, that sounds great. I'm excited, even though it's still early. So just a few shout outs to people. Lots of people tuning in. So we've got Lisa from Camberwell, Charlotte from Brixton, Ian from Hither Green, Pam from Upper Norwood, Lisa from Herne Hill, Joe from Penge, Amaldan from Forest Hill, Jill from, she doesn't say, but Croydon Way, Anna from Brixton, and Emma from Brixton. Oh, and then Alex Birmingham from Clapham Junction, and Sanjay from Bethnal Green. So what a good haul of good people. That's really wonderful. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you stick with us for the rest of the day. So the other thing to say is just don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've got a whole load of other stuff coming up as well. A really, really good program of events. So make sure you subscribe and hit the alert button for our channel to keep up to date with everything that we've got coming up. And now what we'll do is we'll start to go over to a few of these Sangha videos. So we've had a really good response. Lots and lots of people have written in with videos or sent in videos, short videos about their practice. And what I thought we'd get, as we're in Dharmaprasada community, as Dharmaprasada community sort of become the studio, if you like, for the Brixton Buddhist community, I thought we'd start with a video from all the guys in Dharmaprasada community, which was shot by Much.
I've got a little thing to say, because if there's a second half also to the live stream, which is this evening. So if your video isn't being shown in this first morning, do not worry. It's going to be in the second half. So there's going to be more videos, talk about devotional practice, and then a ritual this evening. So just to bear that in mind if you're looking out for your video.
Yeah, and that's from 7:30 tonight, or you can catch up with it on YouTube later. Okay, Adam, do the magic, make the magic work. Let's introduce our first video.
Which Buddha quality would you most like to embody in your life?
Hello, Machanara. Thanks for asking. It's a very big question. Certainly his compassion comes to mind. Always very, very struck, especially the first time I read it, the story of Ananda towards the end of the Buddha's life, when he described him as he who was so kind. I was very, very struck with the use of that word, of all the words that could have been used. That's certainly stayed with me, and to be able to live that, and to be able to treat people in that way, and to be able to show that towards other people, is certainly a huge source of inspiration for me.
If you met the Buddha, what would it be like?
I think it would probably be extraordinarily overwhelming, actually, in the sort of rare moments that I've felt that or touched into even the tiniest degree of that. I mean, I'm quite an emotional man at the best of times, and I've just felt it's an opening. I think a complete kind of opening. Dropping of any kind of defences and any kind of sense of self, and just a complete opening.
What quality would you most like to embody or that you associate with the Buddha?
Well, I think determination, actually. Well, as probably everyone knows, the night he was enlightened, he said he wouldn't get up from that seat even if his blood dried up until he got enlightened. And I'm very impressed by that. I've been at this for 25 years, trying to get enlightened. And, sometimes it's hard to kind of keep it going in a way sometimes. You think, God, not making much progress here. So I'm very impressed and inspired by that kind of determination. To put it another way, it's quite easy to kind of settle down in a way. Like, actually, you can see here, I've got a pretty nice place, live with good guys. Life's all right. It's quite hard to sustain that kind of determination to actually break through, or even have the faith that there's something to break through beyond a comfortable, happy enough life. So I think that's the quality that I admire in the Buddha, is that he had a life at least as good as this, and he knew that wasn't enough, and was prepared to go through all sorts of hardships and just sustain his practice, just keep going on and on and on until he actually freed his mind.
What Buddha quality would you most like to embody in your life, Adam?
Yeah, I think the Buddha quality I would most like to embody in my life is the quality of imperturbability of the Buddha. I find myself I find myself sensitive, so I can be easily swayed. Although I've got these seedlings of imperturbability already there, and so I can see them growing. So that really attracts me from as the quality of the Buddha that I'd like to embody the most. Yeah.
The thing that most attracts me, I think, about the Buddha is his ability to communicate. He just seems completely open and free and spontaneous in his communication. Anyway, yeah, the Buddha was this amazing communicator, and he could he would just kind of take people in from what the stories and so on that we've heard about. He just kind of take people in, see to what extent they're receptive, and then just kind of give them what they need. Give them what they need to kind of open their mind and open their heart.
If the Buddha came round for tea, knocked on the door at Dana Prasada, what would you say to him?
I'd say, come in, have a cup of tea.
What would you talk about?
I don't know. I think I'd be in awe. I'd be a bit starstruck, I imagine. But I'd want to. I'd just be amazed that the Buddha is there, present in my life. Yeah. What is that next to you, Viryanaga?
Here.
Yeah.
That's my guinea pigs.
What Buddha quality would you most like to embody?
I don't know really. I've always been attracted to his warrior quality. You know, the Buddha was a warrior, and he talked about overcoming, rather than overcoming people and conquering people. He talked about overcoming negative mental states and what we call Mara, basically the poisons of greed, hatred, and delusion. So his warrior quality.
Has he got warrior qualities?
Mrs. T has definitely got warrior qualities. Haven't you, Mrs. T? Especially when there's lettuce involved.
What would happen if you met the Buddha?
God, I don't know. I don't know whether I'd even recognise him. I mean, isn't he said that he's half man, half ghost, and half crazy man or something like
that?
That's
3 halves.
3 halves. Yeah, I know. I've never understood that. But anyway, there we go. I should know proportions. Hello. I just hope he would be a madman. Like, I hope he would be a madman, completely beyond, normal human social convention. I really like the unconventionality of the Buddha. So I hope he looks mad, actually, and I'd be interested in that. I'd want to engage with that.
Can you get enlightened, Viryanaga?
Can I get enlightened? Apparently, I'm not sure I always believe it, but I must believe it somewhere. Don't know. Maybe I'm a bit too lazy to be enlightened.
Do you think you're going to get enlightened?
When?
I
mean,
I don't know.
I mean, give me a time frame.
Tomorrow?
Oh, tomorrow. Yeah, possibly. If you say the next hour, I'm not so sure. I've got a study-packed evening.
And do you think you will get enlightened?
I don't know. I don't know, but what I'm fairly confident about, because I've got friends who I think are closer to it than me, is that if I do really continue to commit myself, and have committed myself actually these 25 years, if I carry on doing so, I'll at least be I'll have more momentum in that direction. If not in this life, the next. If not that one, the one after. But at least I'll be heading more firmly that way.
Do you think you're going to get enlightened?
I mean, that's an open-ended question there, no time, so yes.
So there we are. That's the five guys from Amarapuspa community, and I've been overshadowed by a guinea pig yet again. So I really enjoyed that. I wasn't sure about when you were shooting it, but I really enjoyed just how you put it together. I thought it was really excellent.
I enjoyed putting that together. I didn't enjoy so much the blooper reel that Lola, my daughter, put together. It's a bit explosive. Not sure we're going to be showing that.
Then you can show that. Yeah, good. Anyway, so I hope that gives you a bit of an insight into us here in community living at this time. But now let's go out and hear a bit more from other Sangha members. So the next video we've got is from Ian, who's talking about being a Buddhist parent.
Hello, my name's Ian, and I just wanted to talk about the impact that Buddhism has had on my life as a parent. So I am the father of a young daughter. She's now 3.5, and we adopted her when she was 13 months old, and I became a stay-at-home parent to her. I stayed at home with her for 2 years before going back to work. And I actually found it really difficult. I found the transition to being a parent really difficult, and I found I was faced with a lot of kind of new feelings and frustrations that I hadn't felt before. And I think it's something we don't potentially talk about all that much, but actually it was quite a challenging time in my life, and this was the time in my life that I discovered the Dharma and discovered Buddhism. I went on my first retreat at Vajrasana the summer after adopting my daughter, and it was really the start of a new process for me. It brought me a new meditation practice, a new way to look at what's going on in here and in here, what's going on in my body and my mind, and looking at how I'm reacting to things and how my sort of self-judgment was adding layers onto things that I didn't that weren't necessarily all that helpful. So it really gave me a way to explore my emotional reactions to things, and to being a dad and to looking after my daughter. And then above that, I then started going to the events at Brixton, joined a study group, and through that I've kind of made connection with the Sangha, and that's another thing that Buddhism has really given me, is the sort of friendship and support of others who are on a similar journey to me, and it never sort of ceases to inspire me, and it's inspired me as a parent as well, and I think the other thing is that that it's given me is the Buddha himself as a kind of example of how things could be different. So a way that I can kind of imaginatively understand how I can be different as a person, what that would look like and what that would feel like. And that's given me a really good focus in my meditation, but just in my daily life as well. It's kind of difficult to imagine the Buddha as a parent, but he was, of course, a parent, and I kind of I find that quite inspiring as well. So what has it taught me? It's kind of taught me how to stay with what I'm feeling when I'm feeling it in the moment, and to stay with uncomfortable feelings. Staying with things like boredom has been it's been really helpful, particularly now during the lockdown. And just being a bit more present with my daughter. So, we all know that they don't stay young forever. They're growing up every day. but this has taught me to really kind of not necessarily enjoy every moment, but just to really see every moment as it happens, and just notice everything that's going on. And it's not an easy task. It's not easy to do every day, and I still find myself checking my phone and getting distracted. But I feel like I've got a real momentum and a real mission now. That's really kind of inspiring me. But also on the other side, being a parent has given me insight into the Dharma, and it's given me a great training ground for applying the Dharma to my real life. Watching a living being develop, watching her become her own person, seeing how her mind is created and seeing how that's influenced by myself, my mind, and my my upbringing as well. And it's given me a really good opportunity to explore my moods and reactions and how I approach things in the moment. So it's kind of it's still a long road, but I find that Buddhism certainly helps me massively to be the type of parent, the type of dad that I want to be for my daughter.
So, go on.
Well, I'll just go. So good to see Ian. We're in a study group together along with a bunch of other guys, and it's fantastic hearing Ian talk about his experience. And I've seen him with his daughter. It's a wonderful daughter relationship. So yeah, I just was thinking he could have done with not shooting it in his broom cupboard, but apart from that. Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, but anyway, really lovely to see that in. Yeah, really lovely. Just a few more shout outs to people. So we've got Jack joining us, we've got Graham, and we've got Stephen tuning in from Stepney Green. So welcome to you three as well. Okay, so I hope you're enjoying the videos. Next one up we've got is Alex. Now I must say Alex looks a little bit somber in this video. It's early in the morning, but he's usually very, very friendly. So let's tune in and hear a bit about Alex's early morning ritual.
Good morning, my brothers and sisters in Dharma. 7 o'clock in the morning, London, Albert Square. This is where I live. This is a very short introduction to my morning routine. I should say my morning ceremony. I normally wake up at 6 o'clock and I'm ready for meditation by 6:30. Sometimes having a coffee, but now I'm giving up on coffee, so I'm having a hot chocolate in the morning before my meditation. This is my living room. It looks different on a camera. In reality, it's much smaller, I should say. This is what it looks like. This is my shrine. I'm going to bring closer so you can see some of my items on the shrine. The stupa, my Buddha in the middle, is a gift from my friend Adam. He brought it from Sri Lanka. Here you can see a small, tiny elephant. That's from my friend Eddie. From Viryanaga, this crystal. From my friend Bruno. This heart-shaped, beautiful stone. Small Buddha from Akashamitra. This is I bought for myself. This crystal apparently is very good for psychic power. I walked into the shop a few weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, and it just kind of caught my attention. It has a beautiful blue color. I also have a card that I recently received from Viryanaga. There is another card at the end of a shrine, which I guess you cannot see properly. And this is where I actually sit. I sit here on this cushion. You can see the cushion. Here's the cushion. I sit on a cushion right in front of my shrine. Unfortunately, I couldn't manage to work out how I can switch the camera back and forward when I'm doing recording, so that only shows my limitations. I think that's it. Thank you. Bye.
So that was from Alex, and yeah, he looked a bit like I feel in most mornings in a way. I got real sympathy for anyone who gets up at what was it, 6 or 7 or whatever to meditate like that. But I really love him talking us through the objects on the shrine. I mean, you get a good sense of a person, don't you, by what they've got on their shrine, you know, and what's important to them. And I was really struck by the fact that a lot of his things on his shrine are given to him by others. Yeah, so it's really lovely. Alex. Yeah. Okay, and the final Sangha video we've got for this morning's section, but don't worry, there's another section later on, is from Lizzie. And Lizzie is she's a woman a GFR Mitra, a woman training for ordination, who works for the Brixton Buddhist Community. So she works as our coordinator part-time, works with me quite closely. And so we've got a lovely video from Lizzie who's talking about her reflections around or practice in lockdown. So let's go over to Lizzie.
Hi, my name's Lizzie. I work for Brixton Buddhist Centre, although I'm currently in lockdown in rural Leicestershire, which is somewhere I have to say that I never thought that I would be living. I'm actually really loving it here. We're in the heart of rural England, as it says on the road sign as you come into town. And it's spring and it's so incredibly beautiful. I've been going for these walks kind of around near the house, and just around the corner there are these huge fields of golden rapeseed and bluebell woods, and the evenings are getting lighter and longer, and there's just this sense of kind of sweetness in the air. It's really dreamy. And there's also a lot of suffering going on in the world right now. And I guess I've been reflecting on the kind of disjunct between these two things, like an abundance of beauty on the one hand and a sense that there's a lot of pain happening out there. I think I can feel a bit guilty in a way, like I should be really trying to connect to this suffering and churning out metta for the unfortunate. And there are times where I do definitely feel a keen sense of being in touch with that. And it's also not necessarily what most motivates me in my practice. I think I can feel a bit bad about that. But I found this quote from Sangharakshita in his book The Buddha's Noble Eightfold Path, which I found very helpful. So he says, "Not for our own sake, nor even for the sake of others should we seek to attain the divine, but simply and solely for its own irresistible sake." So I think I found that very helpful in trying to articulate this sense that there is suffering in the world, and I do want that to be alleviated. And it's not necessarily enough for me to know what I'm moving away from. I think I need to know what I'm like moving towards, or what's calling me forwards. And I think for me that is a sense that freedom, or at least like the kind of pale understanding that I might have of it, is something that's incredibly beautiful. And I think when I feel in touch with that in my practice is when I really feel like why would I want anything else?
So that one was Lizzie, and I particularly appreciate Lizzie's deep reflection. So she's also an artist, so she spends a lot of time thinking about, reflecting and appreciating things. I think with a kind of serious eye, which I really appreciate about Lizzie. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Maitranara now. He's going to introduce our main event for this block, which is the Padmavajra talk.
So thanks. So I want to introduce Padmavajra for those of you that don't know him. He's a good friend of the Brixton community and good friend personally. Padmavajra has a real lineage of practice. He came along, I think, at age 17 to the Dharma. And he was ordained by 19 years old, so ordained and fully committed himself to a Buddhist life at the age of 19. He went on to work in India with the so-called ex-untouchables of the Dalit community, the lowest of the caste system, to help them, help reignite Buddhism in the place of its birth. And he worked there for several years, and then in the last kind of 3 decades or so, he's been living and working from Padmaloka, with the realm of the Lotuses, which is the men's ordination retreat centre in Norfolk. And he's a friend to so many people. He is a real depth of practice, a depth of love, and affects many people's lives. But he also has a real connection with Bhante Sangharakshita, the founder of our movement, who passed away in the last year. And he really exemplifies discipleship and a sense of lineage and sense of commitment to the Buddhist path, and encouraging, inspiring others in the same way. So really delighted. Padmavajra's produced this video for Brixton, so really kind of moved by that. So without any further ado, let's hear from Padmavajra.
So, brothers and sisters in the Dhamma, Namo Buddhaya, Jai Bhim. I'm sitting here in the Padmaloka shrine room in front of the west wall, which is, as you can see behind me, the main figure is the great Buddha of the Western direction, Amitabha, the Buddha of infinite light. And I'm giving a talk to some members of the Padmaloka community, but this talk goes out to our friends in Brixton, the Brixton Sangha. I think you call it the Brixton Buddhist Centre. So this is for you, and this is particularly for your Vaishaka Purnima celebrations, your Buddha Day celebrations. Vaishaka Purnima being the full moon of Vaishak, the traditional day on which the Buddha gained supreme and perfect enlightenment, or supreme and perfect awakening. And as I speak, I'm bringing to mind, as well as my friends in the Padmaloka community who are here in the shrine room, I'm bringing to mind visits to the Brixton Centre, the Brixton Sangha, in that, I don't know if you're still meeting there, but we used to go to that yoga centre, and I gave talks in that wonderful kind of almost attic-like space, very intimate space, and I have incredibly fond memories of my evenings in Brixton speaking on the Dharma, particularly in the summertime when it was very hot, and I really enjoyed the intimacy and the warmth and the intensity of the evening. So I've got my friends in Brixton in mind, and this is a talk for you. And I've given the talk a title, An Abundance of Lotuses, and that title will become clear as we go along. I've been asked to speak for half an hour, and I'm notorious for speaking for very long periods, so this might have to be an edited talk, might need to be edited down, but I'll leave that to you. So we're in this very well, it's not just a very strange period, but it's also a very tragic period, a very poignant period, a very painful period, a very demanding period for human beings across the world. And we're in this period where where our governments are asking us, telling us, ordering us to be in isolation, to be in seclusion, to be away from one another because of the transmission of this disease, which is, killing people and overwhelming the world that we're in. And I know for many people this is a very, very difficult time. It's very, very demanding on their resources, their human resources, having to look after family and having to keep their job going, or if not, sometimes being furloughed and not being able to work at all, and not being able to get out very much. So it's very, very difficult for people. And I know that some of you in Brixton are also working in care professions, and you're having to face very demanding and difficult circumstances where you're caring for the vulnerable and people in real difficulties. So well, what can one say? It's very painful to sort of see that, to hear about that, and yet here at Padmavajra we are in idyllic conditions. We're in very, very beautiful conditions. There's 18 of us living more or less like monks in a perfect retreat environment. So the notion for us of isolation and seclusion is actually very positive. It's positive even though there is this terrible shadow, over the whole world that we keep aware of, and we like to keep aware of. Actually here, in our environment, we are in perfect conditions for Buddhist practice. Of course, it doesn't mean that we're in perfect mental states all the time. I think being now about a month in lockdown, in seclusion, it kind of brings up, tricky things, which some of you would probably smile at, who are having to, look after your children and loved ones, and as I say, being involved in the caring professions. And we can, even in these perfect conditions, we can make a bit of a meal of our mental states, if you like, which is, perhaps not the best response to things. Generally, though, we're in pretty positive and skillful states of mind. And it's interesting to reflect on this notion of seclusion, of isolation, because there is a traditional Buddhist word called viveka. It's used a lot in Buddhist texts, and it means removing yourself from the affairs of daily life, going into retreat, removing yourself from that. And we find the word used at the time of the Buddha's enlightenment itself. You find in many descriptions of the Buddha's enlightenment, it says that he was secluded. He was away in retreat. He was in the forest. He was beneath what became called the Bodhi tree by the river Narangara, away from things. Yes, there were villages nearby for alms food, but he was away from things. He was quite apart from things. He wasn't just apart from things physically. There's another kind of viveka, which is the sort of withdrawal, if you like, from the withdrawal from the heart, from involvement in unskillful, negative mental states, and completely being occupied with the skillful, particularly the higher levels of meditation, what we call the jhanas in Pali, the dhyanas in Sanskrit, these higher absorptions. So you've got this sort of progression of viveka. You withdraw from the hurly-burly of life, and you withdraw from the material world, as it were. You withdraw from the usual distractions, and then you withdraw your heart from being bound up with unskillfulness, with greed and hatred and delusion and conceit and and fear and all those very negative states of mind and distraction and so on, and you just become more and more absorbed in what is truly meaningful, in more and more absorbed in loving kindness, in awareness, in states of concentration, and there's an unfolding of consciousness. So this is very, very important. And we find descriptions of the Buddha's journey to enlightenment when he'd discovered the way, had this intuition about the way forward, of him just being absorbed in deeper and deeper meditation, supremely contented, but moving on to see deeply into the nature of things and find that liberating truth that we call enlightenment. And there are many descriptions of this, and I'm sure on your in Brixton on your Buddha Day celebrations you'll be exploring this in greater detail. But I'm not going to go into the nature of the Buddha's enlightenment right now. I might sort of touch on it as we go on. But there's a whole kind of unfolding of, for want of a better word, experiences that the Buddha has. You find him, for example, for 7 days after his attainment of enlightenment, 7 days sitting in meditation without moving, enjoying, the text says, enjoying the bliss of liberation, the vimutti sukha, the bliss of liberation. And I think this is a very expressive way of describing the Buddha's enlightenment, this tremendous absorption in bliss, in satisfaction, and that is born of complete liberation. It's a very, very important way of describing the Buddha's attainment of enlightenment, is complete liberation from all negative emotion, greed, hatred, and so on, and liberation from complete confusion and ignorance, and the entry into this completely unbounded state, if you can call it that, because a state sounds something bounded, this unbounded something, which we call enlightenment. Sometimes it's described, that enlightenment, as the dawning of a great light. The word is aloka, a great light, which also can mean a very clear picture, because the Buddha has a very clear picture and vision of the way things are. It's described as the opening of the eye. The eye, the Buddha just sees with the eye the way things are, the eye of reality, if you like, because there's no difference between the seeing and what's seen. It's just this dawning of reality. So you get all these different terms. Sangharakshita, our teacher, has reflected very, very deeply on the different accounts of the Buddha's enlightenment. And in a very early one, a seminar he did on an early collection called the Udana, which begins with stories of the Buddha's enlightenment. His commentary on this, being asked about sitting for 7 days, many multiples of 7 days, without moving, he said it's as if after enlightenment, there's a very, very deep absorption, because that enlightenment isn't seen with any kind of ordinary mind. It's beyond all conception. He was even tried to sort of give a glimpse of what was seen. He said it's as if the whole of the Buddha's life had just gone over the edge, as it were, over the edge of the precipice. And like the stream of his being had just gone over the edge. And there's just this one flash, a flash in a sense out of time, in which there is seen the nature of things. And then there is a period of deep absorption in that. An absorption which begins to see how can that direct experience of things be turned into language, be turned into words so that it can be understood, so that it can be communicated, so it can be lived out for the benefit of all. And there's a very, very important moment in this unfolding sequence of things in the Buddha's enlightenment, where we find the Buddha deeply meditating. It's presented as a sort of set of reflections, but I think we have to sort of imagine it's not just any ordinary thought. This is a sort of deep meditation. It goes like this. This Dhamma, which Dhamma usually means the Buddha's teachings. Here, it means reality, the way things are. This Dhamma, this truth that I have attained is profound. The word in Pali is gambhira, which just means deep. It's profound, it's deep. It's the deepest possible thing, actually. It's deeper than deep, if you like. This Dhamma that I have attained is profound. It's hard to see and hard to understand. It's not an easy thing. Sometimes people like to present Buddhism as though it's really sort of easy to get, really sort of straightforward. And in a sense, it is, but at its deepest level, it's not easy. And beware flip presentations of Buddhism. You're dealing with the most profound of the profound, which is hard to see and hard to understand. He then reflected that this Dhamma is peaceful. Shanta in Sanskrit. It's peaceful. This isn't any kind of ordinary peace. It isn't the sort of peace where you just say to somebody, "Oh, leave me in peace," because things are too much. This is the deepest possible peace. You perhaps get a feeling for the end of our sevenfold puja after the mantras, and we have the Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. And there's that deep peace that can open up if you've really done the puja properly. And this mantra is said to be the pacification. It's the mantra, in a way, pointing to this peace of nirvana, the complete pacification of craving, hatred and delusion, even at their sort of subtlest level. So this deep, deep peace. It's peaceful and sublime. Sublime, the Buddha says. It's sublime. It's, really quite beyond what we usually think about, how we usually conceive things. There's a sense of awe that one would have in relation to the Dhamma if you've realised it properly. So it's sublime, unattainable by mere reasoning, a takavachara, or a better translation, beyond the sphere, the reach of reasoning. This is very, very important. Sometimes we think we've mastered Buddhism because we understand it intellectually, but the Buddha's enlightenment is beyond thinking. It's beyond thought. There's no thought involved in the Buddha's enlightenment. It's beyond all reason. It's beyond ratiocination. It's beyond any kind of conception whatsoever. It's subtle, the Buddha reflected. Subtle. Very, very subtle. Very, very subtle. You've got to be very, very attuned to intuit the Dhamma. To be experienced by the words, by the wise. This word experienced is not perhaps the best translation. It's Vedanio in Pali, and Vedanio means something like it's to be intuited by the wise. Experience implies you're sort of getting something. It's something intuited. The Buddha also uses the word rasa to describe in other places, to describe his enlightenment. The taste. It has a tasting. It's direct. Veda can also mean feeling. That can be misunderstood, but I think you're getting perhaps the sense of what the Buddha is trying to get at. So he reflects in this way that this Dhamma is that he's attained to is profound. It's hard to see, hard to understand, peaceful. It's sublime, unattainable by mere reasoning, subtle, to be felt, to be tasted, by the wise, by those who know. And then he reflects on the world he's in. He reflects, but this generation, by this generation it means all of us, that which is born, that which comes into being. This generation delights in worldliness. The word for worldliness is alia, and it means here not just our worldly attitudes, our materialistic attitudes, our grasping attitudes, but also the things that we grab hold of as well. It's both inside and outside. This generation delights in worldliness, takes delight in worldliness, rejoices in worldliness. It's interesting, you know, we have this word in Buddhism, don't we? The samsara, the wheel of life, conditioned existence, and you know how difficult the samsara is. And we're sort of feeling that very strongly at the moment with this present crisis. Samsara. But we are samsara. That's the point. We're not in it, we are it. We take delight in worldliness. We rejoice in worldliness, in our reactive, if you like, attitudes and all the things that goes with that. And he goes further. It's hard for such a generation to see this truth, to see the truth, namely specific conditionality, conditioned co-production. So this is really, really crucial. The great sort of doctrine, for want of a better word, the sort of essential description of what the Buddha actually saw, the way he describes it is in terms of this principle of conditioned co-production. It's a very clunky sounding word, not a very poetic phrase at all. Pratitya samutpada in Sanskrit, paticca samuppada in Pali. And Sangharakshita, he said the difficulty with these old Pali texts, it can all sound very worked out, but he said it's beyond reason. So he believed that, you know, what really happened, if you like, at the Buddha's enlightenment, there was this great flowing over the edge into something completely open. And what was seen in one flash was the arising and the passing away of the whole of life. And that arising and passing away came about through the arising of particular conditions that give rise to further conditions that give rise to other conditions. And all of that is bound up in craving and delusion, which leads to suffering. But it's a vision, a direct vision, a completely liberating vision in the Buddha's case, because what he sees through is all of those conditions which have led to his continual going round and round the toil and strife of the wheel of life, of samsara. And the Buddha goes, so this is the truth that's very hard for us to see. We can read all the words about it, listen to talks about it, but we don't feel liberated through hearing it. And he goes further, and it is hard to see this truth, namely the stilling of all formations, the stilling of all conditions, the renouncing of all grasping, the destruction of craving, dispassion, cessation, nirvana. So this is the Buddha's description of nirvana as the complete ending, the complete liberation from all of the strife and stress and suffering that comes out of our craving and grasping and unknowing. That's what he's saying is so difficult for people to get. And then he goes further. If I were to teach the Dhamma, and teach is Dhammadesana, which means more like communicate, show, reveal this truth, others would not understand me, and that would be wearying and troublesome for me. And then he breaks into verse. enough with teaching the Dhamma that even I found hard to reach, for it will never be perceived by those who live in lust and hate. Those died in lust, wrapped in darkness, will never discern this abstruse truth, which goes against the worldly stream, subtle, deep, and difficult to see. Considering thus, my mind inclined to inaction or reluctance rather than teaching the Dhamma, making known the truth. Well, there's an extraordinary kind of moment in Buddhist history. The Buddha's had this liberating vision. He's completely liberated. He's enjoying the bliss of liberation that's very, very subtle. And then he kind of brings to mind others. And he just has this sense, this deep realization, they will not see it. And that will be wearying and troublesome to me if they don't see it. It can be a bit of a difficult one, this, because we sort of think that Buddha, surely he'll never be wearied or troubled. That's impossible. And unfortunately, it's. I think that attitude can be a bit more to do with our expectation that other people should be perfect and give us everything that we need. The thought that the Buddha has reached a place where it's going to be highly problematic to communicate that truth. This can be very difficult for people to accept, but we need to look at our own mundane human experience, our ordinary experience. You sometimes have that experience, don't you, where something much deeper that you've realised and understood, which is very precious to you, is there. You know, it's in your mind, and you're really desperate to communicate it. You want other people to know it, and you try. They're not interested. They're indifferent, or they react to it, or they, like I say, a lot of the time they just don't care about it. That's very, very painful. It's very, very painful, and after a while you think, well, why bother? Why bother trying to communicate these things? I've known people come along to Buddhism, generally, and the relief that they feel that they can communicate about deep matters is palpable. They say, I've never been able to communicate like this. Trying to communicate like this, even to people who I've been closest to in my family or old friends. I've never been understood. It's very, very painful. Well, on a much, much higher sublime level, this is what the Buddha is getting at. The Buddha is transcendent. In a way, what's being depicted here is the complete transcendence of the Buddha's realization. It's trying to give us a feeling for the otherness, if you like, of enlightenment. Again, there can be a way in which we try to just incorporate enlightenment into our worldly attitudes, incorporate the Dhamma into our life so that it makes us feel more comfortable. Well, this particular moment in Buddhist history is showing, no. The Dhamma, the truth of the Buddha, is of a different order entirely. And in a sense, there's nothing to keep the Buddha with us. There's nothing in him, as it were, to keep him with us. He's so beyond, so altogether out and beyond our way of looking at things, our way of seeing things. There's nothing to keep him. He's way, way out there, way beyond. And it's very, very important to meditate on that, to really meditate on that, to really reflect upon that. This is why we have these stories.
Great to hear from Padmavajra, and just to say, as he alluded to in the video, Padmavajra is, as we can see, he's a real expressive talker, and there's quite a lot of that. So we've broken it into two halves. We haven't edited it down in the way he suggested. We broke it into two halves, so we can get the full version. We'll be looking at that second half in a little while. But before we do that, I wanted to lead us in what's called a Buddha Smriti, or recollection of the Buddha, a way to just really ground ourselves into, or maybe even touch into, I'll get a glimpse of the experience that Padmavajra is alluding to. He also talked about that kind of retreat experience. So let's see if we can even touch into something of that nature of that together. So so you don't need to do anything special. You can just sit on your sofa, sit on your chair, wherever you are. If you want to sit on your cushion, it's probably going to be about a 15-minute meditation together, guided meditation. So just get yourself comfy, settle in, and when you're ready to, just closing your eyes. So just settling yourself. There's been a lot of words, so just settling yourself. And just tuning into how you are just now. On this Saturday morning. Maybe allowing your mind to broaden out a little bit from the screen. Start to take in the sounds, sense of space around us. Just getting that sense of our mind slightly unravelling from that tight focus. And then we can feel our bodies here, present, on the chair, on the sofa, on the cushions, wherever we are. And just getting a little sense of the body, sense of your body, sensations. Noticing how they don't necessarily fit to the outline of your body. Seeing if we can let go a little bit through the tummy. And through the shoulders. And allowing our gaze to relax behind the eyelids. Coming into contact with the area around the heart centre and the chest. Just feeling all the sensation that's present. Maybe approaching it in the way that it's just energy. Sensations of the body, how we experience the body as energy held in this much broader space. Breathing with that. And then imagine, if you will, ourselves moving through a forest. You can imagine this forest is the kind of landscape of our lockdown. We've had some dark times blundering in the undergrowth, and then there's been openings sunny glades, times of peacefulness as well. There's been day and there's been night. And imagine if we can, that we've been in this forest for some time, even some days. And we emerge as the trees thin out and the light becomes a little bit more abundant. In the morning light we emerge into a glade. Soft grass, old flowers. In the particular atmosphere of this glade is something quite compelling. Something exhilarating. And we notice the shape of a man at the foot of one of the trees. And he's just sitting there in the morning sunlight with the bird song. And this man looks wild. Unshaven, in ragged robes. Something quite challenging, but also a deep peacefulness. Energy and radiance, and in a way an invitation to enter into that sphere. So imagine, if we will, just seated in the presence of this man. We just settle ourselves on the grass. Doesn't feel like any urgency. He has his eyes turned downwards. And so we sit in the presence of this man. And all the qualities that we would like to feel in our life are present there in this atmosphere. Deep sense of peacefulness, a vibrant energy, sense of security and stability. And a deep love and open-heartedness. And all we need to do is just be receptive. Just allowing whichever of those qualities we need to meet our energy. Just being receptive and open. To the influence of the Buddha qualities. Relaxing ourselves. Allowing for ease in our experience. So here we are in the presence of the Buddha, in the sphere of the Buddha, in the influence of the Buddha. We're just going to let that image dissolve. But in a way, it doesn't dissolve. We can always be in touch with the archetypal Buddha. Every time we bow to a shrine or light some incense, in the presence of shrine, every time we just sit quietly and to mind the Buddha quality, the way one's present to the archetypal Buddha. So we're just returning to our immediate sensations, our direct sensations. Feeling ourselves grounded. And just becoming aware that we're meditating with our friends in the community. Feeling that sense of connection, solidarity. And just let go any effort at all. Okay, good. So, yeah, maybe we touched something there, and we can just stay with that as we launch into the second part of Padmavajra's talk. He left us on a bit of a cliffhanger. Will the Buddha teach? So let's hear what Padmavajra has to say next.
So he's sitting there, reluctant, meditating. And then the texts say, the ancient texts say, and this is the Buddha actually describing this, because he's telling his life story to his disciples. He said, then Brahma Sahampati knew with his mind the thought in my mind, and he considered the world will be lost, the world will perish, since the mind of the Tathagata, accomplished and fully enlightened, inclines to inaction rather than to communicating the Dhamma. Then just as quickly as a strong man might extend his flexed arm or flex his extended arm, I like that image in the Pali text, Brahma Sampati vanished from the Brahma world and appeared before me. He arranged his upper robe on one shoulder and extended his hands in reverential salutation towards me. So a little bit about Brahma Sahampati. So Brahma Sahampati is a god. He's a god with a particular interest. He's not enlightened. He's not a creator god. This is very hard for us to understand, but in Indian tradition, in the tradition of the Buddha and his disciples, in traditional Buddhist cosmology, you have these higher heavenly realms, so to speak, inhabited by these devas. And the Brahmas, there are many different kinds of Brahmas, are very, very elevated indeed. And Brahma Sahampati is right out there at the most refined of levels of consciousness, corresponding to different dhyana levels. And he has a particular interest, he has a particular concern. He feels a concern for the whole of life. He can't teach, he can't sort of teach Buddhism or anything like that. He doesn't know the truth, but he knows what the world needs. So he has this sense of responsibility, and he knows that the Buddha's teaching is going to improve people's lives, it's going to lead to liberation, and without it, people will perish. People will decline. The world will decline. And Brahma doesn't want that. He seems to have some compassion, some responsibility. So he vanishes from his realm and comes to the Buddha, and he salutes the Buddha. He regards the Buddha as greater than him. The Buddha is known as the Satadeva Manusa, the teacher of gods and men. He's transcended even these higher heavenly realms. And he says this, Bhante, Venerable Sir, let the Blessed One teach the Dhamma. Let the Happy One, the Sugata, teach the Dhamma. There are beings with little dust in their eyes who are wasting through not hearing the Dhamma. There will be those who will understand the Dhamma. And then he breaks into verse. In Magadha, that's the region in which the Buddha is, there has appeared till now impure teachings devised by those still stained. Open the doors to the deathless. Let them hear the Dhamma that the stainless one has found. Just as one stands on a mountain peak, can see below the people all around, so, O wise one, all-seeing sage, ascend the palace of the Dhamma. Let the sorrowless one survey this human realm, engulfed in sorrow, overcome by birth and old age. Arise, victorious hero, caravan leader, debtless one, and wander in the world. Let the Blessed One teach the Dhamma. There will be those who will understand. So this is one of the great sort of passages in Buddhist literature. This great God, this great being, entreating, begging, pleading with the Buddha to teach out of compassion, out of love. There will be people who will see. He sort of knows that the Buddha, has had this deep meditation that people will not get it. And that will be painful if they don't get it. Brahma knows that there will be people who get it. So he begs him to teach, because people are wasting. They're wasting, they're perishing through not hearing the Dhamma. And again, that word wasting, perishing, I've had the experience of, people telling me their life stories and, how they felt that they were really in decline through not finding the Dhamma, and that their life was wasting away, that they were, as it were, decaying, and how the Dhamma has given them life, how Buddhism has given them life and energy, something very deeply meaningful to live by, that is, in relation to reality, in relation to the way things are. So this is an extraordinary moment, but what are we to make of it? Sometimes when people reflect upon this, they say, well, in a sense, it's describing a whole process in the Buddha's unfolding enlightenment. This is the arising of compassion. Brahma isn't really outside of the Buddha's mind. This is the emerging of compassion and love for others. It could be that. It could be that. It's interesting that Brahma sees with his mind the Buddha's mind. Brahma is a sort of slightly lower, at a much lower level of consciousness from the Buddha. He's in the Brahma Lokas, which are states of great loving kindness and compassion and sympathetic joy and equanimity. It's the abode of all that, and perhaps it's the emerging of those qualities in the Buddha's mind. Not that they weren't already there, actually. I'll come to that in a moment. Or it's telling us something about us. I said earlier that it can be quite shocking to think that the Buddha doesn't feel he can teach. It will be wearying. It will be painful. It will be vexing. It will just be such a drag to communicate and people not getting it. Well, what does that say about us? What we need to do is to get into a state of entreaty and supplication. We have this in the Sevenfold Puja, don't we? In the Sevenfold Puja, what is really going on in the Sevenfold Puja? We're enacting Brahma's request. That's what we're really doing at that stage in the puja. You could say the whole of the puja is getting us into a state of alert receptivity. I don't want to just use the word receptivity, because so often the way people talk about receptivity, it sounds terribly passive, and very passive in a way to their own experience. Entreaty and supplication, this urgent, open, alert state, is when you recognise that you deeply need the Dhamma. You deeply need to come into contact with the Buddha. You deeply need to come into contact with something greater than you. You're definitely looking up. You're not coming along with lots of conceit and thinking you know it all. That's gone through the other stages of the puja. You're profoundly open and receptive. You want to learn. You need the teaching. When I think of my visits to Sangharakshita, sometimes I'd go away disappointed. I didn't feel I'd had a good communication. Sometimes I'd go and I really felt given something very, very profound. Looking back, it was entirely to do with my mental state. If I went to Bhante, to Sangharakshita, in a state of really wanting help, really needing something deeply, and really open to whatever he said, then I would really listen, I would really hear. If I went feeling already full, and that, it was just a bit of chit-chat or something like that, or just trying to show how intelligent I was and how developed I was, not interested. I'd get something. I'd for sure get something, because Bhante is a very, very wise man. But I'd learn so much more when there was that quality of entreaty and supplication. So we need to get into that state, that mood, all the time, actually. It's interesting, in the puja, after the entreaty and supplication, we have a Dhamma reading, and we have the Heart Sutra. You know, at that point we should get to that point in the puja and we're really listening. We're really taking in the Buddha Vachana, as it's called, the word of the Buddha, and it goes in directly. So in a way, Brahma Sahampati's request is something we have to continually enact in relation to the Buddha. And you find in Buddhist literature, you know, very, very strong verses of entreaty and supplication. There is a wonderful verse from the Sutra of Golden Light, sung by a goddess named Bodhisattva Samuchaya, the goddess who is the collection of all bodhisattva qualities. And she sings this paean of longing and entreaty to the Buddha, really wanting to hear what the Buddha has to say, really wanting the Buddha to appear, to be with her. So the Buddha needs to be entreated. We need to entreat. And then what happened? The Buddha responded. So something, some being, some consciousness in, if you like, conditioned existence in the samsara is calling out. So his enlightenment, his enlightened quality looks again. So he says, then I listened. The Buddha is open. I listened to Brahma's pleading. And out of compassion, karuna, out of compassion for beings, I surveyed the world with the eye of a Buddha. This is very interesting. It's not an ordinary eye, it's not a sort of philosophical eye, it's not a psychic eye, it's not any kind of mundane eye. It's his enlightenment looking at us, looking at all beings, taking in everything, everybody. So he's surveying the world with the eye of a Buddha. I saw beings with little dust in their eyes and with much dust in their eyes, with keen faculties and with dull faculties, with good qualities and with bad qualities, easy to teach and hard to teach, and some who dwelt seeing danger in this world and wanting to live for the world beyond, in other words, for enlightenment. Just as in a pond of blue or red or white lotuses, some lotuses that are born and grow in the water thrive immersed in the water without rising up out of it. And some other lotuses that are born and grow in the water rest on the water's surface. And some other lotuses that are born and grow in the water rise up out of the water and stand clear, unwetted by it. So too, surveying the world with the eye of a Buddha, I saw beings with little dust in their eyes, with much dust in their eyes, with keen faculties and with dull faculties, with good qualities and with bad qualities, easy to teach and hard to teach, and so on. And then I replied to Brahma Sahampati in a verse, open for them are the doors to the deathless. Let those with ears now release their faith. Thinking it would be troublesome, O Brahma, I did not speak the Dhamma, subtle and sublime. And Brahma is very pleased. He's very, very happy, and he leaves the Buddha then, feeling that he's really done something good in entreating the Buddha to teach, and the Buddha has responded. But this moment where the Buddha surveys the whole world, all beings, us, and seeing us in all sorts of stages of development, all sorts of stages of growth, as being like, it's interesting, he uses poetry, he uses metaphor, he uses vision to describe something which is beyond really all language. He sees us all as being like lotuses, white lotuses, utpalas, red lotuses, padmas, white lotuses, pundarikas. They've got different names for these lotuses in Indian language. He sees us all as these different coloured lotuses growing up out of a great lake. Some are stuck in the mud, some are emerging, some are standing clear. It's a tremendous vision of growth. I talked earlier about the transcendence of the Buddha's enlightenment, and it could sound a bit negative, all that stilling of formations and nirvana and cessation. Here's the other side. Here is the vision that there is positive growth towards complete liberation. This is represented by that wonderful vision of all of us being like lotuses growing in a great lake, growing up out of the mud. It's one of the most treasured visions in Buddhist tradition. You know, really the way I suppose I see it, because he's seeing it with the Buddha eye, it's the Buddha's full enlightenment, if you like, the fully open 1,000-petaled lotus of the Buddha's enlightenment resonating with the emerging enlightenment in us little lotuses, coming up out of the mud, growing towards the light of enlightenment. And it's interesting that straight after this vision, the Buddha immediately leaves the Bodhi tree. He immediately leaves the Vajrasana, the place of enlightenment. He immediately starts to find people to communicate his Dhamma to the truth. There's no separation after that vision, after seeing. It's then just a life of continual communication with anybody. I mean, the first people he finds to teach are his old friends, the ascetics, who'd rejected him very, very negatively. You know, but he doesn't think about how negative they were to him. He's not interested in that. What he's interested in is that they can grow. He sees that emerging lotus of growth, of faith, that response to the truth. That's all he's interested in. All he's interested in is the deepest part of those people, and he wants to show them and teach them the way to enlightenment. And you also see in the Buddha's life how he starts to articulate that path of positive growth. He even sees the Praticca Samutpada as a whole sequence of stages and states unfolding, building up in the direction of enlightenment. He describes the Dhamma in those terms. So this is, really very, very important that we have this sense that the Buddha's enlightenment isn't just about one man becoming liberated. It's about the whole of life becoming liberated. That potential is possible for all of us, for everyone to emerge out of the swamp, out of the mud. And lotuses grow in very, very muddy places, really disgusting places. I remember in India, when I lived in India, I remember going on a walk once in the mountains around Pune, very early days, and I went by this really, really black pond. Just turned a corner, I was right, this really black, viscous pond. It was almost sort of oily mud, stinky mud. But it wasn't just that, because coming out of this were these gorgeous, heavenly, pink, deep pink lotus flowers emerging out of the blackness. So it completely transfigured the whole scene. I know sometimes, people believe that they're particularly in particular difficulties, and they're a particularly difficult person with all sorts of problems and difficulties. But lotuses grow in the most difficult places. So we shouldn't be concerned about that, because whatever our state, whatever our situation, we can emerge. We can emerge up out of that. It's interesting, after the Buddha communicated his Dhamma to his 5 old ascetic friends, the next people he communicated to were the playboys near Sarnath, of the city of Benares, merchant sons, who were in a real mess. some of them. Yasha, particularly. You know, a real mess. He's just completely bored out of his skull with his life of continual self-indulgence. You know, listening to music all the time from his girlfriends or his courtesans, being fed all the delicacies, you know, that were around, you know, by his parents, you know, having his own special palaces and conveyances, no doubt wearing the best gear available. And of course he just reaches this point of utter ennui, utter kind of indifference, boredom, and realizing this is absolutely horrible. Bhayanka in Marathi. This is terrible. It's terrible. Awful. This sort of hell of indulgence. He stumbles across the Buddha. And the Buddha communicates with him. And he gets it. He gets the Dhamma like that. Immediately. Again, the Buddha's not interested where we come from, what our background is. The Dhamma's not interested in that. Our Triratna Buddhist community shouldn't be interested in that. As long as you come, because you are searching, you want to lift up out of the mud. So we need to all join in being part of this abundance of red and white and blue and pink and whatever colour you like, lotuses, emerging out of the mud. This is what the Buddha's enlightenment is really communicating to us, that we can emerge out of things. There's a wonderful sutra. This image of the lotus becomes so important in Buddhist tradition over the years. It becomes more and more important as a teaching. So there's a sutra called the Viryanaga Nirdesha, and then this is a Mahayana sutra, and it really goes into this business of ordinary people, wretched people, people like you and me, people in difficulty, people who might be really together, but actually they're still in difficulty, even though they think they're really together. And Viryanaga explains, yes, they can follow the Bodhisattva path, they can follow the path to enlightenment. This is what he says. He sort of starts by talking about people who are quite saintly. They're quite saintly in their approach to things. So this is Manjushri actually talking, the Bodhisattva of wisdom, to Viryanaga. Noble sir, one who stays in the fixed determination of the vision of the uncreated is not capable of arousing the urge to enlightenment for all beings. Very interesting. However, one who lives among created things in the minds of passions without seeing any truth is indeed capable of arousing the urge to enlightenment for all beings. Noble sir, flowers like the blue lotus, the red lotus, the white lotus, the water lily and the moon lily do not grow on the dry ground in the wilderness, but do grow in the swamps and mud banks. Just so the qualities of the Buddha do not grow in living beings certainly destined for the uncreated, but do grow in those living beings who are like swamps and mud banks of passion. Likewise, as seeds do not grow in the sky, but do grow in the earth, so the qualities of the Buddha do not grow in those determined for the absolute, but do grow in those who arouse the urge to enlightenment, even though they have a view of themselves as fixed and unchanging as the King of Mountains. It's a really interesting passage, but I particularly like this language. Doesn't matter what you think about yourself, what you feel about yourself. If you feel that you're very muddy and swampy and so on, you can still grow in direction of enlightenment. You can develop all the Buddha's qualities. So on this celebration of Vaishaka Purnima, the full moon of Vaishak, Buddha Day, the celebration of the Buddha's enlightenment, let's remember this great vision of lotuses, this emerging of lotuses. Let's remember too the sublimity of the Buddha's teaching, We have to kind of hold, if you like, both ends of this story, the transcendence of the Buddha's enlightenment, that it's way, way out there, way beyond us, and we can emerge in the direction of that enlightenment. Both are true, and we have to hold both. So thank you very much for listening. This is much longer than half an hour, but it's an abundance of lotuses. Thank you.
Great. So thanks so much to Padmavajra for a great talk. I just think that Padmavajra there evoked kind of vision of the human potential, the Buddha's vision of the human potential. A lot of richness in that, in all that imagery, especially the swamps. And this image of Padmavajra turning the corner in India, and there's been this black swamp and these beautiful pink flowers emerging out of that swamp. He's just, I think he's evoked for us something of that otherness of the Enlightenment experience, but also something about where we can kind of, where we're working, our working grounds and our potential. Thanks very much to Padmavajra. I'm just going to hand over to Viryanaga now. Say a few things.
Yeah, so communities and organisations are much like lotuses, so they also need nourishing. So out of the mud of the day-to-day, our day-to-day life, communities need nourishing, and our Brixton Buddhist community is much the same as that. So this is. So basically, I'm going to ask you for money. I'm going to ask you for money here because we do need nourishing in order for this sangha, in order for this lotus to bloom. We do need your help to keep going, and to be part of a community means to contribute to that community. So lots of people give time and lots of people give money to Brixton Buddhist community, but we do need to do a bit more, and I do need to ask you for a bit more. So what we've calculated is we need to raise £2,000 a month to keep all our activities going. So these live streams take a lot of effort, particularly from Lizzie and myself as the organisers, but also from the teachers and volunteers as well. But we don't quite have enough to keep going at the moment. So we need to raise £2,000 a month. So we've got a donometer. Here it is. Here's our donometer that shows us how we're doing. So we've raised £1,000 so far this month. So I'm going to ask you if you could contribute to this fund. And what we're going to use this fund for is not only, firstly to sustain what we've already got, but there's also lots of things that we also want to do that we just don't have capacity to do at the moment. So we're really stretched with our resources. Resources basically means people and money. So we're stretched in terms of that. And we've got some really good ideas. Like we'd really love to put on a summer retreat that you can do at home, really immersive plan that we've got. We want to put on other activities for people. But at the moment, that's just not possible given the scale of what we've got available to us. So I want to ask you to think about contributing on this Buddha Day. And basically we're really ideally looking for monthly subscriptions to help us sustain the community for, basically on an ongoing basis, but certainly as long as the lockdown lasts. So maybe you can commit to a monthly standing order. And if just 40 people gave £50 a month, we'd basically have all we need, and we wouldn't have to worry about it for a bit. So I want you to think about giving to that standing order appeal, but also one-off donations are greatly appreciated as well. And I'm going to keep this donometer updated during the course of the day, so come back later for the second part and we'll let you know how we've got on. And I'll give you some thanks as well. If you make a donation today, I'll give you some thanks on that stream later on if you want them. Okay, so that's that for the dana. Please think about in continuing this circle of generosity. What we've got later on coming up is more community, more sangha. What I really love is just this sense of the fact that we're all out there, we're all sitting in front of our laptops, or in this case sitting in front of cameras. We're talking to you, you're talking to us in the chat room, and we're all practicing together where we are. So we're going to continue that later on with a ritual, a short ritual, just a short 3-4 puja. But also we'll have a bunch of other sangha videos from other people that have sent in videos. So if yours wasn't in this first half, tune in later for the second half. So we're going to hear more from our community. And then we've also got a little sort of a mini keynote talk from Amarapuspa as well, talking about what Buddha Day and what particularly ritual means for her. So it's a really, really good talk. I recorded it with her yesterday. It was really excellent. So tune in for that. And then it'll be me and Machanara again hosting that at 7:30. So I'll hand back over to you.
Yeah, great. So hope to see you there. We'll be up in our shrine room for that. So there'll be a change of scene, and hope we can build an atmosphere around some puja tonight. We've got one more event in between times. We've got a Zoom call lined up, Zoom meeting for 12 o'clock. So still time to have a leg stretch and do whatever you need to do, get a cup of tea and still kind of arrive to that. And a Zoom meeting, it'd be a real chance to discuss some of the ideas within Padmavajra's talk, draw them out, see how they're relevant in our own lives, in our own situations. So do just kind of tune into that. The links to that are in the description, and they should also be in the chat box. So just come along to that. Amarapuspa will be hosting that. I'll be there. Viryanaga will be there. So look forward to seeing you shortly in more kind of personable situation on that Zoom call. So until then.
Well, thanks for tuning in. Great to have you on the stream. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that alert bell. Okay, it's goodbye from me.
Yeah, it's goodbye from me.
Yeah.